All right, hey, welcome everybody to Unfair, Deceptive, or Abusive Acts or Practices, UDAP. Trust me, you will know it when you see it, and if you work in financial services, you will see it a lot. Probably a good way to think about UDAP is think about Al Capone, gangster Al Capone. The feds tried to get him on racketeering, gambling, extortion, and nothing would stick, so they had to try to find a side door. That side door was tax evasion, and they took him down. And UDAP is kind of that side door in the mortgage industry. Trust me, there. If you work at a shop, there will be UDAP violations every single day. So we're just trying to manage those. Limit the number of UDAP violations, and try to get after the ones that are pretty severe. So my name is Brian Bronco. I'm a Seattle-based California and Washington attorney. I also have a California and Washington real estate license and a background in mortgage compliance training and compliance itself. I've held positions in the industry everywhere from, an admin assistant to a paralegal to a mid-level compliance officer. I've worked as a mortgage trainer. I've worked as in-house counsel. I've worked as outside counsel, and I've also worked as executive level chief compliance officer. So I've seen the industry and all the shenanigans that happen from a lot of different areas and levels within the compliance world. Time frame: I've been around the block a few times in the industry. I worked in mortgage compliance back right after the dot-com crash. I worked in compliance in that '03 to '08 fun bubble time. I mean, the recession, that was just brutal, watching what happened there. So I saw the good, the bad, and the ugly there. And then I've also recently been in the industry, during the Obama administration, Trump administration, and Biden administration, working at mortgage companies. And whoever's in the big office really has an impact on how the regulations are handled, because they appoint the federal directors for the agencies like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. So that has a big impact, and it really shifts how the industry is regulated. Also, I've worked at a bunch of different shops. I've worked at mom and pop single office shops, big banks, mid-sized lenders, direct lenders, depository institutions, credit unions. So I've seen the industry from a bunch of different positions and time frames and different size shops. So I have a pretty good idea of what's important to the regulators and what lenders should be doing to protect themselves, and that's where we come in as compliance attorneys and compliance officers. Three big takeaways for today, just based on what I've seen in the industry over the years. First, client selection is critical for attorneys that work for banks and lenders. It's a tough industry. It's highly competitive. It's very complex. You have hard deadlines with the disclosures and the closings, and there's going to be a lot of pressure placed on you to kind of manage things and move things along, and we got to get loans closed. You got to be aware of that if you're new to the industry. It can be rough, and you've got to be really clear on the differences between misfeasance and malfeasance. We saw what happened back in the recession in '08. Companies were going out of business left and right, foreclosures left and right. Got to be accountable as an attorney. Market shifts, any kind of shift. It could be shifts with interest rates, or it could be shifts in the administration, the presidential administration. That impacts how the industry is handled and regulated. Anytime you have a big shift, that leads to panic. Anytime you have panic, that leads to bad decision making. Third, UDAP is going to be the most important regulation that you train on and handle as a compliance attorney with a lender. UDAP impacts everything. It impacts every department. It impacts every regulation. It impacts every single part of the loan cycle, from advertising to servicing closed loans. So you got to know UDAP inside and out, and you got to make sure that you're training staff at the level they're at so they have a good understanding of what their obligations are. So let's jump into page 2, the roadmap. What are we going to do today? Man, there is nothing more fun than regulatory compliance. I'm sure everybody would agree with me on that. So here's what we're going to talk about today for UDAP. We're going to do an introduction, look at kind of the history of the industry briefly. Then we will jump into the UDAP test. We've got unfair, deceptive, or abusive. These are 3 separate tests, and 3 separate paths to go down to find out if you have a UDAP violation. You can have something that's unfair. You can have something that's unfair and deceptive. You can have something that's unfair, deceptive, and abusive. Then we'll look at UDAP impact on the industry. We'll briefly cover the compliance management system, which is sort of the umbrella and the framework for how you protect the company. We'll briefly cover the importance of consumer complaints. Do not go light on consumer complaints. That's one of the main things that regulators will look at to see if you have UDAP issues within your company. And then we'll close it up with some best practices for attorneys. I'll jump up on the soapbox and kind of give you some advice on what we should be doing and not doing, and what we should be tolerating and not tolerating as a compliance attorney for some of these lenders.